Hello, everybody. Welcome to our roleplay read aloud here in Toonkind Land. My name is Wes. I'm going to be playing. Well, I had played and will be reading for Chifley Forde. And I am joined by one of my very best pals. I'm doing jazz hands in your approximate direction. Introduce yourself. Ta-da.
I take those jazz hands and I swing them in the air like so many bananas. Don't ask me why I'm swinging bananas. Oh, don't want to know. Hello, my name is Dew Point. I'm the other half of this RP text read aloud, and I'm going to be playing Lao. I feel with this read aloud, this will give context for some things that have happened to Chifley. Um, I
Yes,
was
it
just
will.
like, you know, no, some of the things that happen to Chifley don't make a lot of sense. And that's because, oh, it was in an RP read aloud. Oh, it was in an RP that we did,
Yeah.
and we didn't actually put it outside of Draft House.
Yeah,
I was going to
exactly.
translate it into a text thing, and then I didn't.
Oh, this is more fun anyway. But yeah, we're going back
Yeah.
in time, fam. This takes place immediately after Lau and Chifley's very first FPS together, which I believe was called Exlibris. Um,
It was.
and yeah, so there is exactly maybe 5 minutes at most between the end of that FPS and the start of this. So we're just going to be reading through. If you have not listened to any of the read alouds that I've done before, we're just going to be reading through it, the text. So it might not flow as nicely as a normal game, but it is what it is. So my post was first, so I'm going to get us started. So Chifley let Lau lead the way away from the library, his new loan safe in his hammer space for the journey for the promise of coffee. Though Chifley planned on ordering hot chocolate, he wanted to sleep tonight. Of all the effort that went into getting that book, he hoped it was a good read. With your familiarity of it, I would suppose you spent a lot of time at that library.
Al snapped out of his inner debate. He told Chifley he wanted coffee, but honestly, a chai tea sounds far more pleasant right now. But he told Chifley he wanted coffee and let out a huff. Oh, no, not so much as you may think. I usually pop in, grab what I need, and pop right out again. Puffs and glares at the book of funny, still safely nestled in his lap. It's just today that this little bugger, he gestures at the book of his lap, decided to give me the runaround and stir up a fuss. He looks toward Chifley and cocks his head. About yourself, are libraries a place you frequent often?
He smiles and nods. Yes, we visit quite often. He says, my sister always has books out.
Sister. Lau's eyes furrow. She sounds like quite the avid reader. And this is where I ask Wisp to roll insight.
Oh, yes, it was only a 12. It was atrocious for Chifley, really.
That's this boy. To be fair, they've only just met, so
This is
it's
also very
probably
fair.
fine. Uh,
Um,
uh, Chifley. Okay.
oh, no, it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay then. Chifley may notice that Lau wants to say something, but seems to be holding back.
Mm, she's still learning. She gets me to read to her more often than not, he says with a small chuckle. And he smiles with at Lau encouragingly.
Read to her. Lau mutter under his breath as he looks away towards the end of the street. He shifts in his chair before asking, I hope you don't mind me asking, but how old is your sister, Chifley?
Chifley blinks. She's 5.5, or so.
And I roll a thing. I got a nat 20 for a deception. Everything is fine. Lau just nods and says, I see. Lau takes a breath and smiles, looking up at Chifley with a warm smile. It's good that someone so young is taking an interest in books. From what I've heard, it's usually a task in of itself to get them to sit still. He chuckles and looks around, trying to spot a cafe of some sort to pop into. And with an 18, He spots a cafe coming up just around on the corner.
Chifley smiles and nods. She has a lot of energy. Thank the gods for school.
I can only imagine. Now gestures towards the cafe. So, shall we?
Chifley nods. Yes, let's. I will admit, more in the mood for hot chocolate than a coffee at this time of day.
Lau chokes down a laugh. I think I may have to agree with you there. 3 coffees may have been a slight exaggeration on my part. Lau approaches the door and opens it, holding it open for Chifley to come through.
Chifley hesitates for a moment, but then steps through and grasps the door as he does so that Lau can come in as well. Is it hard to get your chair around? He asks.
Lau begins as he makes his way in, nodding in thanks. I found Einkrell is certainly far more accessible than what I'm used to. Toons come in so many different shapes and sizes. I suppose adapting to that would have been, well, inevitable. So in not so many words, not that hard.
He nods and turns his eyes to the cafe, spotting a vacant table and heading towards it. That's good. I wonder if we have a ramp at work. He muses idly.
Lau follows, carefully manoeuvring between the tables and parking at an empty spot. Work? I thought you wanted to be a tutor. And Lau gives Chifley a slightly bemused look.
Oh, I do, but I wasn't planning on charging for it. He answers, sitting down opposite him. I am an archival assistant at the Enquo Continental Color Registry.
Ah, I see. Less paid tuition and more so letting loose your inner bard on some curious souls. Loud smirks as he scans over the menu. I'll admit I've never been to the ECCR myself, but I've read much about it. Toon ailments are both simpler and more complex matter than I would have first assumed.
Chifley smiles sadly at that remark, looking away for a moment before looking up again. It is worth going for a checkup. You, He trails off and looks awkward.
So at that, I had to roll an insight from Lau. Got an 18, and he wants to know about that pause.
Yeah, Chifley has mixed feelings about the word bard.
And I reply with, "Ooh, Lau has no tact." So Lau winces, and sort of thinks to himself, sensitive about the bard thing. Right, okay, drop that topic. What, Mr. Forde? Lau props his head on his hand and raises a brow at Chifley. I should pop in for a checkup.
Chifley jolts and blushes with embarrassment. Sorry, it's not my place to comment.
Lau lets out a wry huff. No, it isn't particularly your place at all. He turns back towards the menu. He knows he said coffee earlier, but bugger it, he wanted a chai tea, so that's what he's getting. However, I do understand it can be difficult not to care about that sort of thing, considering your profession. Apparently, I get much the same way at times. Lau rolls his eyes, closing his menu and sliding it aside.
Chifley just stares at the table, looking right scolded. A tall Toon approaches their table, a UPA and Minotaur wearing a pink apron over their buff form. Hello, welcome to mine or tea time. Can I get you anything to drink to start?
And this is where I praise Wes for the name, because Mino Tea Time has just a great name. But yes, we continue with, yes, a chai tea would do wonderfully, thank you. Lau looks over to Chifley and winces. He starts to thumb the blanket on his lap. And whatever the gentleman here wishes as well.
The Minotaur turns to Chifley expectantly, and he looks up. Oh, a hot chocolate, please. Certainly. Marshmallow? Yes, please. Their waiter offers a small moo sound, writing their orders down. I'll get those for you right away! And off he trots. Looking at Chifley, Lau can tell he's embarrassed and feeling guilty for offending Nahausen by overstepping.
Lau looks at Chifley, at his posture and turned away eyes and sighs. As he begins to speak, he tucks the books still on his lap into his hammer space. Chifley, I'm not upset with you. Having concerns for someone, especially one who's a complete stranger to you, is arguably a positive thing. Care that much is... Lau flounders for words. It's not something I'm altogether familiar with in regards to people, but I understand your concern and not being needlessly nosy.
He looks back up. I'm very sorry. I find it hard to switch off that way of thinking, I suppose. I don't mean to be intrusive.
Lau narrows his eyes. Chifley, I've said it's fine. I understand you don't mean to be intrusive. Lau drums his fingers against the table. You keep insisting on apologising, I'm going to have to do something about it.
He blinks. Something? Like what?
Lau smirks and leans back in his chair. You like to know. Apologising, and I'm sure you'll find out.
Chifley's expression was conflicted. He clearly wanted to stop apologising and being annoying, but he was also dreadfully curious. So he offers a tentative, I'm sorry?
Lau stares at Chifley, dead in the eye, and I roll a sleight of hand to get something out from under the blanket, and I roll a fumble from his hammer space, and then I roll a nat 20, which does a very certain thing.
Yep.
In which I replied, "Oh God." Although Lau attempts to be subtle, Chifley sees him reach under his blanket and pull out a book that starts to rattle, and Lau's eyes widen. And this is where Chifley makes a con save.
Which he does not pass. That was a 9.
Does not. And I roll for Lau, and he gets another nat 20. So as Lau lunges to close the book, it lets out a horrendous shriek, rattling the table and chairs underneath you. Something whispering to him, prodding in his mind, before Lau is able to wrestle the book back into his hammer space.
Chip's hands snap to his ears and he winces.
Takes some deep breaths, his hands gripping the table tightly as he looks Chifley over. That was not meant to happen. Al glances around the room and winces. People were definitely staring now. Didn't mean that. That wasn't. Bloody hell, I suppose it's my turn to make apologies. Are you alright?
Chifley nods, lifting his hands from his ears slowly. What was that?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Al ducks his head into his hands. The gift my mother got for me. Apparently it does something, but we don't know what. Chifley between his hands. You sure you're all right?
He was shaking a little, but it was calming down. Dissonant whispers? I don't feel hurt, though.
In which Lau rolls a medicine check. Because...
Clerics do what clerics will do.
Clerics do what clerics will do. And he gets a 19. So Chifley appears a little shaken, but from what Lau has seen of this book's effects before, he should probably be alright. The hot chocolate should help with the shaking, at least. And then... he reaches under his blanket again, and guess what? He fumbles again. And guess what? He gets again. Another nat 20.
Oh, good grief.
At this point, me and Wiss are despairing in the text RP. As Lau reaches under his blanket and, for heck's sake, pulls out the book again. And at this point, Chifley has to roll another con.
Which he gets a nat 1 for.
It's not one. Now there's a 17. So once again, the book begins to rattle the tables and chairs, scooching them across the floor little by little. Other patrons of the cafe cover their ears, but Chifley, you feel something knocking on your mind's door last time. Now it's coming in. And you feel something wriggling, looking at your surface thoughts and memories, and you can feel its hunger.
Chifley is responding in panic. He's very much in panic and just casts Sacred Flame on that book. So it's not actual fire, but he's not enjoying the process. A beam of light snaps through the window onto the book and singes the cover for 1 point of radiant damage.
You rolled another nat one. Drops the book as it shrieks and rattles even harder, its pages flipping rapidly backwards and forwards. That feeling in your head writhes and thrashes as it withdraws, and Lau stares wide-eyed at the book before quickly scooping up and chucking it into his hammer space.
And Chifley hisses and grasps at his head as it did 5 points of necrotic damage to him, and doubles over in his seat.
You get 5 necrotic damage on your way out.
Yeah.
Parting gift. So now Lau is now incredibly concerned. Oh, fuck, Chifley glances around the room and, oh yes, people are looking now. They are none too happy. Lau rolls over to Chifley's side and speaks softly. Chifley, can you stand?
Yes. Ouch. He breathes.
Alright, okay, just let me... Lau tentatively offers a hand out for Chifley to take. As he does so, the Minotaur from earlier begins to approach their table.
Chifley looks at the hand and it takes a second for him to process the gesture. Before he can move, however, the Minotaur has reached their table and slowly places their drinks down with a quiet moo. Here we are, 1 chai and 1 hot chocolate with marshmallows.
Lau gives the server a quick glance and a nod before turning his attention back to Chifley. He has his priorities. May I remove your glove? Lau speaks in a low, soft tone.
Chifley looks at the worn brown leather glove on his hand. Sure, he answers.
Lau removes Chifley's glove and carefully sets it on the table, ignoring the server for now. Now, usually I'd give you a potion for this, but seeing as where it's kept at the moment, his shoulders hitch up as he takes Chifley's hand, this shall have to do for now. And Lau casts Cure Wounds. And he casts that for 9 healing. And the ache in Chifley's head slowly eases, ebbing away like waves out to sea.
The pain in Chifley's expression eases and he sighs. Goodness gracious, he says softly, looking up. Thank you.
Lau mutters something under his breath, before turning back towards the server. I presume not being told to ask us to leave, then he nods towards their drinks. Tall Yuppie and Toon shrinks back, ears tucked to the side of their skull as they hold the tray close to them. No, sir. At least, yeah, sir. And, I believe at this point I suggested Whisk could roll perception.
Yes. Yes, I did. I got a 23. Pretty
good. You did good. So as Lau was inspecting his hand, Chifley hears him by his, I should say, as he was inspecting Chifley's hand, he hears him mutter to himself, "Thank not the beast that bit you, it is owed no grace nor praise."
And Chifley is absolutely rolling inside on that remark and got a 25.
Chifley will notice Lau's outline has smudged like a smear or a spot of rubbed charcoal. Combine that with his hunch posture, the curls above his head laying flat to his neck, and avoiding eye contact, you can tell he feels incredibly guilty for the pain he caused you, however accidental. The phrase itself, you're pretty sure Lau is referring to himself.
Chifley smiles lightly and gives Lau's hand a pat. Come on now, your tea will get cold.
Lau twitches at the contact before levelling a dryly amused look at Chifley. Are you sure you don't want to say bugger it for the day, considering he taps the side of his head? That?
That was a surprise, I won't lie. But it wasn't your fault.
Lau sighs again as he moves himself back over to where his tea's been placed. It was my book, in my hammer space, that inflicted the damage it did upon you. I can't see how that isn't in some way my responsibility. He curls his fingers around his mug and looks at Chifley's mug. You may want to drink that up. Sweet things help with the after effects.
He nods and picks up his mug, taking a long sip. What was it?
Al focuses intently on his tea, taking small sips and rubbing the side of the mug. As I said before, I have no clue as to what that book's purpose is supposed to be. But from what my Mamara has managed to dig up, where it was found is a dangerous place for the unprepared to venture.
How curious. He muses, chewing on a marshmallow.
That's not. Curious is most certainly not the word I'd use. Chuckles a little. It's typical that upon wanting to wind down from one book giving us trouble, another should seek to cause us more problems.
Chifley smirks at that. The rule of funny at it again, he responds. I'm sure there's someone laughing at us.
Yes, that rule of funny is certainly something else. Lau stares pensively at his mug, taking small sips and tapping his fingers against the side. Anyhow, weren't we here to have a discussion over deities? He leans back into his chair.
Chifley brightens. Yes, I believe so. He agrees. Yours, the White Heart, you called them.
Ah, yes. Lau mirrors Chifley, perking up in his seat. But that's heart without the E, mind you. Information and accounts detailing their sightings are sparse as it is. One of the reasons I was in the library today, actually. He pats the blanket on his lap, pointedly keeping his hands in sight. So I'll tell you what I can about them. What would you like to know?
How did you come across them?
Well, that's not a very interesting story, honestly. And I rolled a deception and I got a 21.
Yeah, Chifley did not pass that one. That was an 11.
I was wandering through the forest near my home and I heard a rustling in the brush. I turned to look and... all pauses. There stood a white stag. Caught a glimpse before it fled, but sometimes a glimpse is all you need.
That's all of him you've seen since?
Oh, there's a reason information on them is so hard to find. Lau braces his arms on the table, his line-up going wispy and light and very fluffy looking. They appear before people rarely, sometimes lifetimes apart. To actually honestly say you've seen them, or run with them. Lau grins widely. You'd be blessed, though, with what is often debated.
He nods understandingly. Well, they're real enough for your magic to flow from the faith in them. That's not something anyone could deny.
Well, Lau shifts a little self-consciously. It's hard to deny they exist when they leave such an impressive first impression. They're magic, I suppose. He trails off, lost in thought before shaking his head. About yourself, you said you were a cleric of some sort of sound deity?
Chifley takes another deep drink of his hot chocolate before nodding. Yes, the soundtrack, the bard's boon, the world's music. We call them many different things.
Leans forward, as does the curls upon his head. The world's music. That is a mighty claim for a deity to make.
It is rather accurate, though. They create all the background themes for all the people and all the places all across the world, he declares cheerfully.
Oh my. Lau doesn't have eyebrows, but if he did, they would be raised. That sounds like an exceptionally difficult task for both people and places. He pauses, pondering. As their cleric, do you assist them in such manners? Or. He looks at Chifley and asks.
No. He admits. The choir, that is the name for the congregation. Their work provides them with the assistance. I am something of an outlier.
In which Lau absolutely rolls insight on that and gets Jack all with a 10. So instead he just kind of squints and says, how so?
He shrugs a little. I do not sing in the choir.
Harder. Is singing a necessity?
Somewhat.
He narrows his eyes even more at you and waits expectantly.
That does not work with an 8.
So he tried to roll an intimidation. Yeah, no, 8, don't cut it. It's not very intimidating. So upon receiving no response from Chifley, with his look, he changes tactics. I understand it's called the choir, but surely there's more to music than simply singing. I'm no bard, but the voice cannot solely be relied upon to create a song.
Oh, yes, of course, but it is as much a turn of phrase as anything.
Right, well, if singing isn't your task, what do you do?
At the moment, not much. I used to tend a small shrine, but it's a long way from here.
Well, if all goes well with the tutoring you plan on doing, perhaps that could become your new task? Lau drums his fingers along the table, hands still clasped around his mug. Assuming you get the choice, of course. I've no knowledge on how your faction works. Lau nods in understanding at the mention of the shrine. Can't pry about the circumstances, but would you not be able to establish a shrine for them around here somewhere?
I have been working on something like that. He nods. Oh, it is taking a while. I think I went overboard on the project a little.
Lau's drumming on the table stops. He hesitates a moment before looking directly at Chifley. You are undertaking this alone. You haven't asked for assistance? Lau is not usually the type to go out of his way for things like this, but...
I have asked for help. I've just not utilized it yet. Chifley answers, I've been so busy. I was thinking of putting it on hold for now and doing something smaller as an interim thing.
That may be for the best, especially if you're taking on someone to mentor alongside taking care of your sister and your job as well. Trails off in consideration. What sort of smaller thing do you have in mind? Perhaps he hesitates, but continues on. Perhaps I could give some assistance. He utters that last part quietly into his cup.
Chifley blinks. You would want to help me?
Al blinks back. Well, other than my research and my plans, I've not much else to occupy my time, so if you need an extra helping hand, he shrugs, I'm not above getting my hands dirty.
He smiles. I would be delighted for you to help me.
And as Chifley smiles at Lau, he notices a change in the outline again. Pretty solid before, with a faint tint of smudging along the outside. But now his outline has softened and lightened again, wispy and cloud-like, despite the casual expression he tries to maintain. You can tell he was not expecting you to accept his offer. Yes, well, Lau clears his throat. As I said, I'm not afraid of a little hard work and hands-on experience, so if you should need me... He pauses as he reaches for his blanket.
Chifley goes tense, just in case.
I don't suppose you have something to write with on you? I would, but he waves a hand over his lap. That is best left alone for now, at least until I can get back home.
Chifley offers an awkward smile and nods. Understandable. One moment. And he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a notebook and pen set.
Ah, yes, thank you. He mirrors your awkward smile, his outline becoming more solid as he holds a hand out. Yeah.
He slides the notebook across to the other Toon. Go ahead.
Al takes the notebook and pen set, scribbles down the address, and slides it back over to Chifley. If you should need me, you'll likely find me here. If not myself, then one of my... He hums and tilts his head in amusement. My roommate.
Chifley smiles and nods, taking the book back. He writes in the book on the next page and tears it out, offering it to Lau. Likewise, here's ours.
Al nods and takes the piece of paper, keeping it close. Ah, yes, thank you. I'll keep this close at hand. He taps the piece of paper underneath his hand.
Chifley nods and sips at his drink contentedly, one hand on the side, the other underneath, ignoring the handle entirely.
Did you have any ideas for this small project of yours? Perhaps I could help.
Chifley hums thoughtfully. I had thought to make a small shrine somewhere, though my old shrine was about the size of our living room and made of stone.
Lau pondered on this. Ponders on this. Would you like something similar to what you're used to dealing with, both in terms of size and material?
I have no idea how I would even accomplish that. Where to put it, how to build, who to build it. I'm not a builder.
Well, if you aren't incredibly particular about the materials, who and how won't be an issue. Al smirks as he looks at you. Location is more so the issue at the moment. Think of anywhere nice?
I don't know. He thinks about it. The old shrine, I would mostly keep it clean and tend the garden beds. I furnished it, kept it nice, but I was the only one who ever went out there. I went there to read and to relax and practice my new magic.
So, somewhere private then? Al ponders, taking another sip from his mug. Well, seeing as it is your shrine, I'll leave location up to you. If you think of anywhere especially, I can go assess the place and see what I can do. His head twitch and curl forward. Lau's head cocked in interest.
Oh, yes, my cleric magic.
Yes, first time spellcasting is always fun.
He turns his hand over on the tabletop and gazes at his palm. It has proven very useful magic indeed.
In which I insight the hell out of that.
Chifley's expression is thoughtful and bittersweet somewhat. The spells of a cleric, Lau would know them well. Healing is what they are known for. Someone dear to Chifley needed those magics.
Owl's outline smudges slightly, and he starts picking at his blanket again. Yes, Lau knows very well what clerics are supposed to do. A subject change is sorely needed. He clears his throat. Tell me about your sister. Lau blurts out suddenly. How is she doing? And in his head, he thinks, why was that the first thing he thought of? Why? Why is it the first thing I thought of?
Chifley takes another second or two to react to the subject change. My sister. What to tell? She's 5 years old, loving school, learning something new every day.
Lau scrunches the blanket beneath his hand. Has she shown an interest in any particular subject?
Chifley rolls an insight, gets a 19.
And I roll a deception. And you just missed past.
Yep.
Chifley can pick up that the blanket picking is a sort of nervous tick, and whilst Lau does seem genuinely interested about Missy, he's also a little unsettled.
Chifley frowns a little, but answers the question. She's quite the artist, actually, drawing and painting in particular. Our apartment has piles of drawings of people we know. He tells him. Oh, is there something the matter?
Lau blinks and looks at you oddly. The fidgeting stops abruptly. Perfectly fine, Chifley. Thank you for asking, he says, like a liar. He looks at you and smirks. This is she. Perhaps you could ask her to help decorate the shrine with you. Could be a fun day out for you both.
Chifley frowns, not quite convinced, but lets it go. She might like to, yes. He takes another contemplative sip of hot chocolate. In a park somewhere might be nice, but I don't know how one would go about putting a shrine in a public place. Oh, I suppose there are plenty of prismatone temples in the places around here.
Al perks up at the mention of prismatone. Oh, you're familiar with them? Lau's eyes widen and his curls twitch. I admit I don't know an awful lot about them. The few books I've found are vague at best. His brow furrows. That sounds like you need a permit, or at least go through some amount of paperwork.
Possibly. I could ask her. He muses, swirling his remaining marshmallow around in his drink.
Upstairs. Ask her.
Chifley looks up. Oh, yes, she's usually quite happy to answer questions.
You can... Al pauses. That is to say, she often comes to those who aren't her followers.
Chifley smiles. This is the reason I have a job at the CCR, he explains. There's a statue of her in the foyer. And the smile grows a little. I suppose it is rather funny that I have spoken to Prismatone more times than the deity I actually follow.
The voice of the world is rather shy, then? Al absentmindedly sips his tea. He gave you the job themselves?
Chifley laughs a little. Yes, I suppose they get stage fright. It would explain why most people can't hear their work. Chifley eats his marshmallow before continuing. She didn't. She just told me it was there, but having their patron's recommendation didn't hurt.
Al snorts into his mug. Yes, they'd have to be rather foolish to ignore a recommendation from the goddess they so revere. Hear their work. Is their work not present now, with us here talking, in the world around us? His eyes droop slightly as he takes in the sound of the cafe around them, and the streets around the cafe.
Chifley shakes his head. That is not what I mean when I say the world's music, he says. Let me put it one way. Have you ever seen a movie or a play and heard an orchestra play in the background?
He cocks his head, uncertain of the term movie, but nods. I've seen live performances once or twice, usually street performers and the like.
The world is much the same. Each person has a musical theme that plays for them all the time, places as well. People like myself, I can hear these musical themes, my own and of the people and the scenes around me. That is the soundtrack's work.
Al trails off as he looks at you, staring. You can hear people's, what did you say?
Chifley nods. That's correct.
And on confirming that he can hear the soundtrack, Chifley notices Lau's outline shift again, lightening and smudging slightly. Expression shifts to match, openly interested, almost awestruck, and perhaps even a little envious? Curious and trying to hold back a question.
Chifley smiles warmly at him. I could tell you what your theme sounds like if you would like, he says, making a guess at what Lau wanted to ask.
I'm not against it, mind you, although I cannot deny I'm curious, but what would you need to do?
Do?
Well, Lau rolls his hand in the air. Is there some sort of, or some sort of ritual or spell or special thing you need to do?
There is a ritual that I know that allows people who cannot hear to do so for a while through my magic. But for me to hear yours, nothing. It just happens. It plays constantly.
Al sits stunned for a minute. Right then, if it's no trouble to you, I cannot deny I'm curious. He sits back in his chair and slaps his hands together. What do I sound like?
Chifley closes his eyes to listen for a moment. There is a lot of drums, he muses, tilting his head to one side. There is something else, some other instrument, but I can't quite make it out.
Lau leans forward. Drums? Really? Outline, his outline sort of softens and flits in little wisps. And something else as well. His hands start to tap along the table. Thank you for telling me, Chifley. I appreciate the insight into my life's soundtrack. He cracks a grin at him, his curls swaying a little as he nods his head.
Chifley smiles. You're welcome.
Lau rolls the mug of tea softly between his hands, the liquid within gently swirling. What would you say is your favourite sound, with your favourite theme, if you have one?
Chifley looks down at his mug in thought. He hasn't really thought about a favourite before, and it shows on his face. He's taken quite a while to think about it too. There must be a lot to process against that question. After what was almost an awkward amount of quiet, he then says, I'm not sure it was even their own theme, if they'd all have one, he says softly, because it sounded rather a lot like my own, but the music I could hear when the soundtrack herself stood before me, that was very beautiful.
Lau listens patiently as Chifley replies, sipping the tea still swirling in its mug. You've met them face to face as well. Lau thinks for a second before shrugging. I suppose the deity presiding over music and sound should be pleasant to listen to, unless one should be unlucky enough to displease them. Lau trails off, thinking.
Chifley nods, finishing his drink and putting the cup down. Only the ones. They are quite stunning. Not as colourful as Prismaton, but rather regal in their own way. He looks up. Perhaps.
Al looks at the dregs of his tea for a moment, then looks back at Chifley. This may sound silly, especially as I'm not a follower of theirs and have quite literally just heard of them, Lau begins. But perhaps their theme, or lack thereof, is so they can hear that which they've worked on in full, rather than as an accompaniment to their own soul. Al pauses and then starts to chuckle. That, or perhaps you're secretly a demigod, who's to say?
Chifley snorts. No, I can't say I think I'm a demigod of any sort. No, probably your first theory. I would say it sounds most accurate. Though the difference between my theme and what I heard was mostly the instruments. It was eerie, beautiful, some sort of chime or woodwind, a crystal flute in a tunnel, perhaps. That sound, that is their signature, I think.
Just because you don't think a thing would be true doesn't mean it couldn't. Lau wags a finger at Chifley and smiles. I could be seated across the secret sorcerer, for all I know. A crystal flute on a tunnel. He shakes his head. You're certainly a way with words, Chifley. I think we'll have many, if any, issues teaching with passion like that. After all, there's little joy to learning a thing if the knowledge is forced upon you.
Chifley smiles. Hopefully. It's one thing to play music and another to teach it.
I suppose so, but I'm sure you'll do fine. After all, you're well equipped for the job. Lau gestures at the pocket Chifley shoved his books into earlier.
Yes, I have some reading to do.
Yes, I should probably let you get on with your day, shouldn't I? Lau begins to reach for his coin purse.
Yes, I only need to get busy from school soon and get dinner ready. And Chifley sighs a little.
And I'll get something quick on the way home. Leaves enough to cover the bill, plus tip.
It's not too much trouble to cook.
Al shrugs and lets it go, resettling into his chair and making his way beside Chifley. Walk you to the door?
Chifley stands. Sure.
In which we both make a quick perception roll, and we cut away very quickly from these two boys. So it's Chifley and Lau exit the cafe. Neither of them notice the whole cafe heave a sigh of relief. Many of the patrons from nearby tables slumping or holding their head in their hands. The Minotaur UVA server sighs from behind the counter, turning towards their rubber hose co-worker. Got one every day, huh, Mazim? The rubber hose snorts. Yeah, one every day.
Oh gosh. The pair say their goodbyes as they head their separate ways, but before Chifley leaves Lau's sight, a sound touches the Hausen's hearing. Music. A soft violin and hints of a light, ethereal sound, following Chifley through the crowd, fading into quiet as he vanishes from view.
And that's where we cut.
Yes, indeed. Oh my god. We went there to gush about our gods, which we did, but we got a little bit extra along the way.
Did. Some accidental oopsies. The alternative title to this should have been AKA How Chifley Got His Gosh Dang Headaches.
His gosh darn headaches.
His gosh darn headaches.
Oh, golly gosh. If you're listening to these in chronological order for the first time, whoops, spoilers. Yeah, keep an eye on that. Oh, dear, oh dear.
Yeah, you just... Make a note.
Make a note.
But, make a note. Write it down. Pay attention.
Oh, dear,
This was delightful to write and read out, man. Thank you so
fun.
much for agreeing to figure this out.
A blast from the past. Gosh, they were so awkward at first, weren't they?
I hold up Lau. He has changed so much. He has become so much more bastard.
Trying to be polite to this new person that they just met and accidentally assaulted.
Oh no.
Anyway. Oh dear, oh dear. Alright,
Anyway,
I'm gonna go ahead and start my recording. Thank you for doing this with me, too.
Thank you so much. This was delightful.
Oh,
And thank you for everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy these two wherever they go in the future.
Yes. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.